What's up, meatbags? It's the often imitated, never duplicated Tony TGD coming at you with a follow-up video on the Arcade 1-Up versus Glen's Retro Show situation. Now, if you haven't watched the 2-hour live stream that we did going over Glen's video, giving our thoughts, our opinions on the situation as we knew it at the time, I recommend you going back. I know 2 hours is kind of a long watch. Hit that baby on 2 times speed. It'll fly right by. But today we're doing a little follow-up, or at least I am, because I was privileged to talk to several people involved in several situations uh, between Glen and Arcade What Up. I have agreed to allow these people to remain anonymous in exchange for, getting certain information. Obviously, this information is privileged. No, I will not share the information with anybody. No, I am not going to DM anybody this information. If anybody knows me, they know that I take this stuff seriously. I treat journalism like a serious thing. And so when people come to me, they give me information and they say, hey, I got information, but I got to be anonymous. If this comes out, I'll look bad, or I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, or I don't want anybody to be upset with me for, revealing some things. And I take that serious. And so that will not be revealed. I'll never tell you who my sources are. I'm never going to show you stuff that I'm not allowed to or wasn't told that it's okay to show. So you have to ask yourself, do you trust me? If you trust me, then continue watching the video. If you don't trust me, then probably click off now and save yourself the trouble, because you're probably going to hear some things that you're not going to agree with. You're probably going to hear some things that you don't like, or that makes certain people look bad. And that could be an issue, that could be a problem. But we're going to sally forth. I will say I am not a lawyer, so please do not take anything I say as gospel legal advice. I am simply an educated layman who has taken a few law classes, who's studied this, who's looked into some cases, and done his due diligence on some of these things. So we're going to go ahead and take you way back to the beginnings of Glen's journey with Arcade 1-Up. He made the official global Arcade 1-Up fan page. Now, at this point, Glen had no permission. There was Tastemakers, Arcade 1-Up. No one had reached out to him. He didn't reach out to anybody. He just called his page the official global fan page, Arcade 1-Up. But eventually, they do reach out. They say, hey, we like what you're doing here. And they come to an agreement. They say, we are going to endorse this page officially. So you're going to be the official Arcade 1-Up fan page, right? Now, I think this is where issues started to arise between the two parties, right at the very moment when they agreed to work together. Because, yes, they were working together. It is a business relationship. And I think both parties failed to communicate what the expectations of this relationship was going to be. Glen, on his part, failed to communicate how he felt the page should be run in perpetuity, and what he was going to do and what he wasn't going to do, what he wasn't willing to compromise on and what he was willing to compromise on. And for Arcade 1-Up's side, they also didn't communicate what was going to be allowed, what shouldn't be allowed, what might be content that they said, hey, this is, things that we don't want on the page, right? So both parties, they entered this agreement. They don't really have any clear defined lines. At the same time, Glen is entering into a personal relationship. Both Scott, the CEO of Arcade 1-Up, and John D, the VP, the infamous John D. And again, I think lines were not clearly drawn, boundaries were not clearly set between all these individuals, right? Because we're just humans, we like people, we talk to people. But all the parties involved didn't really anticipate any of this going south. They didn't anticipate what could happen when business decisions had to be made that might upset people on a personal level, right? Glen, he's running his page. He doesn't have any paid mods. The mods are not paid. These are volunteers, right? However, certain obligations need to be met, right? If you're going to run the official fan page for Arcade 1-Up, you can't have people posting, how some other product is superior. You can't have people posting to go buy this other thing, or promoting some sale from, say, iArcade or at Games or something, right? You want to keep Arcade 1-Up content on the page. And now, because people aren't paid mods, mods might be slacking off. They might not be available. They might be at work. You might not have any mods that are actually up and awake at certain times because, these people are all in the same time zone. Or maybe they all work at the same time, or they all, are on vacation because, people have lives. And Glen also has a life, so he can't be there all the time. Now, Arcade 1-Up, in their frustration, they say, hey, we want certain things, these things need to remove. We have agreed that these are the kind of things that should be removed, right? And Glen agrees too. He's even said in his video, you just tell me, I would take care of it. But the problem is, there's an expectation that it be taken care of, as soon as possible, right? So if Glen doesn't have a mod or he's not available to take care of it, and that post is up there for 6, 7, 8 hours, people coming to the page, people maybe have never been to the page before, trying to find information about Arcade 1-Up and seeing these things could turn them off from the community, could turn them off from Arcade 1-Up, perhaps cost Arcade 1-Up a sale. And of course, the page, despite being called a fan page, right? We're calling it a fan page. But the truth is, this page is actually marketing for Arcade 1-Up, right? Any page, any website, forum, YouTube channel endorsed officially by a company has essentially turned that into a marketing tool, right? A marketing vehicle for the product. So Glen, he didn't really understand this. He didn't really seem to get this. And so, almost immediately there was a little rocky relationship, a little rough time between the two parties, right? But they work it out. They go forward and they try to, do the best they can. Now, in about 2020, we have the infamous CES event. That's where Glen took it upon himself, without notifying anybody, without talking to anybody. He just took it upon himself and he said, I'm going to change the look of the page. I'm going to change the branding. So the Glen's Retro Show branding is more prominent. He did that on the Arcade 1-Up page and at Games and a couple other pages that he ran on Facebook. Now, in Glen's opinion, this is a reasonable thing to do because it is Glen's page, right? He runs the page. He owns the page. He created the page. However, again, Glen is naive to the fact that when he agreed to become the official endorsed page from Arcade 1-Up, certain obligations were set, right? You need to communicate these type of things. When you have an event like CES, you have marketing, you have people putting out flyers, websites. The Arcade 1-Up website is directing people to the official fan page, and things need to look a certain way. There needs to be a synergy between all these things. And I'm sure if Glen had communicated this, in advance, some months or weeks in advance, they might have been accommodating. They might not have. Maybe they say, make it a little smaller, or maybe put it into the left, or some agreement could have been made. But because he did it on his own, he did it without telling anybody, without notifying anybody. This is going to cause panic. Any company who has branding, who has marketing, showing a fan page a certain way, showing the website, URL a certain way. Suddenly, this is different from your marketing material. Now, you're scrambling, right? You got to do something about this. This is a business thing. You're affecting business. And again, they hash it out. They agree to turn this into a joke. Is a situation where, hey, we'll pretend like we're just drumming up some drama, trying to get some eyeballs on it. But this has caused the relationship to deteriorate further and further between the two parties. Glen, at this time, launches a Kickstarter for his, GRS Star Wars yoke. And again, this is where issues arise because the Star Wars yoke, the Atari yoke, it's not an official product. It's a bootleg product, if you will, a knockoff. And Glen, he wants to get certain branding. So it's my understanding that Glen reaches out to people at Arcade One Up, see if they could help him out. Say, hey, I'm trying to do this Kickstarter. Let me reach out and see if Arcade One Up can help me. Maybe I can get Atari to, endorse this. Maybe you guys can help me work out a deal where it's not too expensive. And advice was given to him, and advice probably I wouldn't have gave if I was the company, right? I wouldn't advise a small company on how to deal with another company. You're putting yourself in a bad situation. But again, everybody's just friends. Everybody's mixing business with personal relationships, and it's getting all cluttered. So Glen goes ahead, does his Kickstarter. He doesn't worry about the Atari branding, just fly under the radar. Again, things are escalating more and more. Certain people are complaining about the page. Glen saying that the page isn't that bad. Some people are saying the page is that bad. I'm sure Glen's taking this as a slight because, remembering all the earlier interactions where they're like, hey, you need to get some posts down, or hey, this needs to be taken down. And, he doesn't want to deal with it. And there's a lot of pressure going on. He's got things, he's got personal things. He's trying to make his stuff happen, his own business. So I'm sure there was some frustrations, again, on both ends, right? On Glen's end, because, he doesn't understand why the company's, pressuring him to do these certain things. And the company's end, they're confused as to why Glen isn't holding up his end of the obligation, at least in their eyes. Eventually, there is a Red Cross sale, the Illuminati sale, the one we covered. The Illuminati had, got the heads up, and they were all taking turns with this nice Red Cross charity event. And Glen is not invited. Glen is not invited to take part in this. And there's a reason why Glen's not invited to take part in this. Because despite Glen having a good personal relationship with individuals at Arcade One Up, Glen has initiated what he's calling Trongate. Right? Trongate is happening. He's got Trongate plastered on the Facebook. He's got Trongate videos. He's talking about how Arcade One Up, he's alluding to. He's not really being very, straightforward. He's not like, hey, they stole my design, or hey, they're ripping me off. I'm going to sue them. But, it's a lot of innuendo, a lot of wink, wink. I wonder why this is similar type thing. And so from a marketing standpoint, from a business standpoint, despite as much as anybody in the company who might like Glen, this is a business decision that has to be made to not include him in the sale. It's not a personal thing, right? It's a business thing, because you can't have your company promoting an individual who is then promoting that the company is ripping that individual off, right? It's a weird conflict of interest. It's a weird dynamic. Could you imagine Arcade One Up's doing a Red Cross sale? There's like, here's Glen. He's going to sell a couple cabs. Go to Glen's page. And by the way, on his page, he's telling you how terrible the company is. It's bad luck. It's bad luck. And that's train, and we're not going to edit that out. So Glen takes this personal, from my understanding. Again, I'm talking to individuals and getting information. And, Glen takes this as a personal slight. And this is completely the end of the relationship between Glen and Arcade One Up on a personal level. That's it. Washes his hands of the whole situation. And eventually, it leads to the Arcade One Up global fan page changing to the original, oldest, the oldest and original Arcade One Up fan page. And again, Glen does this on his own. He does this without telling the company, right? So the company who has endorsed this page, the company who is directing people to this page, the company who is relying on this page to be a big part of their marketing push, right, is the page for people on Facebook, the official page. And Glen just decides to take it away, right? And again, this is not a thing that Glen can do. This is a thing that Glen could do if he wasn't official. This is the thing Glen can do if it was just the fan page. But again, when you agree to an endorsement, when you agree to this, there's certain obligations that need to be set. And again, because clear lines were not drawn, clear expectations given to one another as to what could and couldn't be done, this causes all kind of chaos. And now Glen says he's been threatened to be sued, right? I believe he says this in the video that he made. He's threatened to get sued. However, in my research and my poring over testimonial from various individuals, talking to people, it's my understanding that Glen was never actually threatened to be sued. It is my understanding that Glen was told that, I'm trying to word this correctly. He was told that they should talk to somebody and see what the legal, ramifications might be, right? Not that we're going to sue you, but hey, if you do this, that could cause problems. So maybe talk to a lawyer. Maybe we can talk to lawyers together. Sure, it's not great to tell somebody that. It's not great to say, hey, this could be a legal issue, or hey, we should talk to a lawyer. But it's not exactly we're going to sue you, right? The level of escalation isn't there, and I think that's a big problem here with this whole situation. Is individuals who hear things and then they put their own spin on it. They put their own narrative to it. They've changed the language, and the language has escalated, right? And we as individuals, we hear certain things and we get triggered emotionally in certain ways. So when you hear, oh, he's going to get sued, that has a different emotional response versus, hey, they said we should talk to lawyers to hash this out, right? You have a totally different response to that. If he said that, people would be like, oh, that's kind of reasonable. We're going to sue you. Whoa, this is a big company bullying a little guy, right? And I'm not saying Glen did this on purpose. I'm saying that, our recollections, the way we speak, people who are not professionals, people who are not marketing people or PR people who don't have the PR speak down. Sometimes we say things in a certain way, and others take that and then run with it. And this narrative gets spun. This ball just starts rolling down the hill and picking up snow until it just flattens the whole one-up village. So I think a lot of people need to step back. We need to step back, stop being so emotional, look at the facts. And again, the facts do not pan out the way that they're being presented by certain individuals. And certain biases are getting in the way. People who don't like certain individuals at one-up, people who may have had issues with one-up or issues with Glen or issues with people who like Glen. They're adding their own sort of spin, their own narrative, their own bias into it. Of course, John D threatened to sue him because John D's a POS. Of course, Arcade One-Up stole that design because, Arcade One-Up makes, products that are not good. But we need to step back. We need to actually look at what was said, what evidence was presented. And again, Glen is saying, he can't talk about certain things because of NDAs. He's not showing a lot of evidence, and that that puts my ears up when people say things without evidence, especially when accusations are being made, right? So let's just cool our heels, take the foot off the pedal, and try to think about things logically. Now, Glen also said that promises were made. Promises were made to him. And again, I have some inside knowledge as to what those promises might or might not have been. And from my understanding, again, it is a business decision. On a personal level, certain individuals who may have made promises to Glen really wanted those promises to come to fruition. However, on a business level, those promises just couldn't happen. For various reasons. And I'm being as vague as I can because I'm trying to avoid exposing anybody or outing anybody, but Glen and maybe anybody who's talked to Glen or Glen has told things to, they should understand what I'm saying. And those of you who aren't privy to the exact details, I'm hoping that you could sort of follow along and kind of get the gist of it. But yeah, so certain things that may have been promised that may have wanted to happen just couldn't happen because of legal issues or other business decisions that just wouldn't allow it to actually work as much as they wanted it to, right? And again, when you have these sort of business decisions that don't line up with what your personal expectations are, they're going to sting and it's going to hurt and you're not going to understand it. If you're someone who's seeing this as a personal relationship and the other individual is dealing with it at a business level, you're going to feel slighted. You're going to feel, as Glen said, stabbed in the back. We're stabbed in the front. We're shanked, as he said. But really, that's not what happened. At the end of the day, you had two parties enter into a business relationship who also mixed personal relationships and totally screwed it up on all levels, both business-wise and personal, right? Arcade 1-Up is getting a ton of flack for this whole thing. Now, we have to look at some individual sticking points, some individual claims that we can either debunk or confirm, because I think these are the crux of the matter. These are the things that really have set the community ablaze, have set the community to grab pitchforks, grab the torches, and go after people. One of these claims was that John D asked that the new page, the one that Lewis was running, that now Arcade 1-Up has co-opted for marketing purposes, that it was created, the banner was created as a slight towards Glen, as sort of a to show Glen that to disrespect him. And the truth is that's not the case. That is not been shown to be accurate, right? Again, this is a business decision, and people who understand business decisions are going to understand this better than those who don't. And when you market things, when you have a certain look, a certain brand recognition, you're going to try to stick to that as much as possible. So the fan page, the official fan page, had a certain name and look to it. Now, they did not lift one for one Glen's design, which, when I say Glen's design, he took some assets that weren't his, put them together in a certain arrangement, and that was his design. Arcade 1-Up got a design similar to the one Glen had. It had a similar look. The name was the same because, again, there is a brand recognition. There's certain marketing, certain things that already were pointing to this name, the official Arcade 1-Up global fan page, right? And so without having to go back and fix a bunch of things and make notes on some old post or make notes on some old videos or whatever that might be pointing to these kind of things, or maybe there was some marketing materials that they had put out, without having to change any of that. They just will use the same name. And again, business decision, and those aren't always the best when it comes to communities, right? Because communities are individuals; they're not businesses, right? They don't see things from a business perspective; they see things from a personal level. And the community seeing this as a personal slight towards Glen. So eventually, Arcade 1-Up gives in, and they change the page, change the way it looks, change the name slightly. And again, the narrative is that John D was forced. The community forced him. Right? Individuals talked to John D. People were messaging him saying, this is what you should do. And I am not here to dismiss any of that. I'm not here to say no. People might, people didn't reach out to John D. People weren't saying, hey, John, this is a bad look, right? No, because 100% people were. But I can guarantee, I can promise you that the final decision did not come down to anyone uh, outside of Arcade 1 Up saying that this was a bad look, right? The decision, again, was a business one. They looked at the situation. They said, this is not helping us. This is a bad optics. We need to correct this. Right. So maybe the timing is coincidental. Maybe someone messaged John and then a few hours later it got changed and they thought, well, it must have been my message that got through to him. I'm the guy who made John change it. Or maybe several individuals did that, right? But this was a wheels in motion type of thing, right? Once the backlash happened, discussions were being made, behind the scene things were going on, you know, they were evaluating the situation, deciding whether or not they should just plow through it or bite the bullet and change it. And eventually it was decided, hey, we need to change this and try to win back the community, try to appease the fans and the angry individuals. And again, a lot of people have the narrative that certain individuals are bad hombres, right? These individuals are just, out for themselves, narcissistic. They're evil. That's not necessarily the case, right? That might be your individual experience with them. You might have an individual issue with that person that other people don't have. But you're projecting that onto every situation. And again, people need to step back, let go of some of their bias and say, hey, a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So even someone who might be a jerk might do the right thing every once in a while, might do things for a good reason, for a honorable motive, if you will. So that, the whole idea that, there was pressure from individuals, from YouTube creators or something, and they forced John D and Arcade 1 Up kicking and screaming to go back and change it. It's not exactly the way it happened. Now, another thing that we need to address is the idea that Glen is selling products of a bootleg nature, right? We sort of insinuated it on the Epic 2-hour live stream. So we're going to take a look at some things that I got queued up here. And as you can see, this is a archive page of Thundersticks website. And as you can see, it clearly says GRS Tron arcade flight stick. This was September 30th, 2022. So as late as September 30th of last year, they were still marketing this as the GRS Tron arcade flight stick on their website, which is a total no-no because they don't have the licensing right to Tron at all. Now, I did discuss how the stick looks pretty much identical to the official Tron stick. Now, you got to understand, and again, like I said at the top of this, I am not a lawyer, but there are several things you need to look at and understand about the situation. You have a utility patent, which covers the operational parts of the stick. You have the design patent, which covers the non-operational parts of the stick, the overall look. And then you have what's called trade dress. Now, trade dress is a tricky type of thing because there have been cases where a Mexican restaurant being decorated in a certain way is considered trade dress, and that other companies cannot infringe on that. They cannot decorate their restaurants in a certain similar fashion because that might confuse people that they're at the wrong restaurant, as silly as that sounds. And then there's other instances where things like the cuffs in a Chippendales logo is not considered trade dress because if other people have cuffs in their logo, they're probably not going to think that they're going to see male exotic dancers, right? So trade dress is about the look of an item or product or restaurant or whatever that puts it into people's mind that it is a particular company behind it, right? It'd be the equivalent of if I made a small video game console shaped like an NES, right? People would think that Nintendo was behind it because it's shaped like an NES. Obviously, Nintendo must be behind it because that's their shape, right? Even if it was slightly smaller, even if it was red and green instead of, the gray color of an NES, right? Those are the type of things that you can't do. Just because you slightly modify the shape, the size, it doesn't fly. And this is clearly Tron, in his design. It's clearly infringing upon the trade dress of Tron, in my opinion. And of course, it doesn't help that it says Tron and is being marketed as Tron. Now, that's the trade dress, but also the overall design, which, to be fair, is that trademark, that whole patent on the design is probably, gone already. But it is, again, modeled after the Tron stick from the official cabinet of the Tron arcade machine. So that could be another issue. And, any company that, is doing worldwide deals, any company that is big time would never, ever sell this on their website without the proper licenses, without the proper permissions to do so. However, this is not the only instance, right? Because you say, well, if you go to the website, it's changed. But if you go to Amazon, now it is out of stock, currently unavailable, right? But as you can see, the GRS Tron arcade flight stick, right? Again, using the Tron name with the Tron looking controller, that could land you in some legal hot water. So that is, again, an issue. Another issue, again, is the GRS arcade flight yoke. Now, they did a Kickstarter. And if you go to the beginning of the Kickstarter, right, the first update, he says, what an incredible fifth day into the GRS Star Wars yoke Kickstarter. And again, he did not put Star Wars. Maybe there was Star Wars on it at one point and they changed it. But right now, it currently says GRS Arcade Flight Yoke. But referring to it in the updates as the Star Wars yoke, that could be an issue. Modeling it identically to the official cabinet Star Wars yoke. And I know you want it to look like the Star Wars yoke because you're replacing the yoke with this one, right? So you want it to look exactly the same. But legally, you really can't do that. Legally, you can't just copy another product, change some interiors, change it to make it better, quote unquote, and then just sell it, right? There are certain legal ramifications to all that. So when we talked about that was that. Now, the other issue with the Tron stick specifically, the whole Tron gate issue, was that there is a locking mechanism in the stick, right? And as people have said, Glen has a patent. Glen has a patent on the locking mechanism and only the locking mechanism. However, Glen has a Chinese patent. And that could be an issue. Now, for several reasons. One, patents are only enforceable in the country in which the product is being sold. Not where the product is being made, but where the product is being sold. Okay? So, even though it's being made in China, where the patent is issued, it's being sold outside of China, where there is no patent, right? And the Chinese patent might not be enforceable. And I'm pretty sure, I'm going to go out on a limb, not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be enforceable outside of China for various reasons, which we will get into. Uh, in the U.S., I don't know how it is in other countries, but in the U.S., patents are issued for the first creation, right? I'm the first one to do this, I get a patent. Uh, Now I know there's going to be examples of people like, oh, he stole someone's idea, and he wasn't the true inventor of the light bulb and all that. We get that, right? Things happen, but for the most part, the patent system in the U.S. is supposed to work with the first person who creates an item is able to patent that item, and they get the patent for it. In China, it is the first person to apply for a patent that gets the patent. So it's not necessarily the creator. People can get screwed over. If you invent something and I run over to China right away and I patent it, and before you got there, it's my patent, even though I had nothing to do with the creation of the item. And so that's why sometimes outside of China, those patents aren't worth the paper they're printed. In this instance, again, from my understanding, from talking to individuals all involved in this, Glen had made the stick, and the stick wasn't made for Arcade 1-Up. Right, this stick was made prior to all that. But he knew that they were going to come out with a Tron cabinet, so he took it upon himself to approach Arcade 1-Up and say, hey, I got this stick. It's better than the other ones. I made it real good, and it doesn't break. It's a great stick. Maybe you guys should use it on your machines. And of course, he's not saying use it on your machines, just have the stick. But he's, well, let's make a business arrangement for this stick. Of course, they get lawyers involved, and people look at it and they say, well, legally, there's no patent on this, right? There's no U.S. patent. We don't know what his Chinese patent says, right? Because again, your patent is only enforceable to what it says, right? Locking mechanism is not what the patent says, and I can guarantee that. It's locking mechanism with yada yada yada, and there's very specific details, right? A 4-prong locking mechanism is not the same as a 3-prong or a 2-prong or a double hook locking mechanism. They're all locking mechanisms, right? But they're different. And so, if they seen his and they say, well, his locks this way, and we can build one that's similar to this, and it'll lock a little bit different, that would pass mustard in some instances. Doubly so when there's no actual U.S. patent for it, right? And so is my understanding that that's essentially what they did. The locking mechanism, though very, very similar, is different enough that legally they feel that they're in the clear. And again, this has probably caused some sort of, animosity with Glen. He feels that they ripped him off, and he feels that they took his idea. And I'm sure, the monetary sting of it, right? That's his design. He would have been making X amount of money. I did hear that money was offered, because people did feel bad, right? They all right, Glen, we'll make you a money offer, or, and the offer just wasn't accepted, whether it was because Glen felt, offering me money at this point is a slap in the face. You can't steal from me and just give me money to make it better. Or maybe the offer was too low, or maybe Glen wanted more than just the money, right? Maybe he wanted to work out some other arrangements, and it just couldn't be met. But whatever the case was, there was no partnership, no coming together on this. But again, legally, Arcade 1-Up is in the clear. Essentially. Again, it would be on Glen to show the patent, to have a U.S. patent to make it enforceable for the most part. Show that the Chinese patent, at least what it says, and that they copied the design, one for one. And then they would also, again, have to show that they knew about the patent and made the product, despite there being a patent out there, right? It's It's really hard because, again, there's individual conversations that were had and made that weren't recorded, right? We're not all walking around with a recorder, so certain things just aren't going to be known. Certain things are just unknowable forever, and we got to kind of take people's memory and recollection. So yeah. So if I'm to summarize all of this, because this has been way longer than I thought it was going to be, if I have to summarize this situation, it is a series of individuals who mixed business with pleasure and could not find a way to separate the two. Took things personal that were of a business nature, tried to make things business that were of a personal nature, and it just didn't work out. And sadly, both parties are at fault. You might think, well, that's company, it's a big company, so they're more at fault, and you're fine to think that. And you might think, well, that's an individual who probably should have known better. He's more at fault, right? You think that. That's fine. We have no opinion here. We're unbiased. We just present the facts as we know them, present what we understand the situation to be, and allow you, the viewer, to come to your own conclusion. Now, if you have any additional information, if you have any new facts that you want to bring to light, you can always reach out to me on Twitter. My DMs are open. You can email me, TonyTGD@thegeekgetaway.com. Or you can, find another way to contact me, get me the information. If you wish to remain anonymous, if you wish your information to be my eyes only, with only certain things being able to be expressed in video form, then it's fine. You let me know. I can work with you as best I can because, again, at the end of the day, I'm trying to get the most accurate information out to my audience and to people who might stumble upon my video. I want to make sure that everything I said is on the up and up. Everything I said is within the legal parameters of what I'm allowed to say, what you're allowed to tell me, so nobody gets in trouble and nobody has hurt feelings. But with that said, love, peace, booty grease. I'm out this bitch.